Reality is not waiting for you to understand it. It is responding to you right now. Every choice you make, every thought you hold, every flicker of attention you give is shaping the universe at the quantum level, whether you know it or not. Most of us move through life thinking we are passengers on a predetermined path, reacting to circumstances, waiting for luck, promotions, or love to show up. Yet the very fabric of reality is far more intimate, far more malleable than we are taught. In fact, the moment you begin to notice that your awareness itself is a force, you step into a dimension of creation where effort becomes optional, where the universe starts to deliver not what you think you want, but what resonates with the frequency of your consciousness. You may have glimpsed it before, moments of uncanny synchronicity, a solution arriving just when you needed it, a stranger appearing with the exact words you needed to hear. Most people call it luck, coincidence, or timing. But what if it's not random at all? What if these moments are the universe responding to an observer who has learned to watch without grasping, to notice without clinging? This is the paradox of creation. The less you chase, the more the world flows toward you. The first step is noticing the invisible. Think of reality as a quantum field, an ocean of probabilities vibrating with potential. Every thought, every emotion, every intention is a ripple in that ocean. Traditional science teaches us about cause and effect in the macroscopic world. Push a door, it opens. Throw a ball, it moves. But at the quantum level, things are far stranger. The famous double-slit experiment shows us that particles, which make up everything we perceive, do not settle into reality until they are observed. They exist in a cloud of possibilities, a shimmering web of could-bes, until consciousness itself collapses the wave function into is. You and I, in every moment, are performing a similar act of observation, whether we realize it or not. Yet here's the hidden truth. Most people are not conscious observers. They are absorbed in the content of life, the drama, the stress, the endless striving. Their attention is scattered, reactive, fragmented. When you operate from this state, you are like a blindfolded pilot trying to steer a plane. You're technically in control, but your influence is chaotic, inconsistent, and often counterproductive. This is why effort alone rarely produces lasting transformation. True creation requires presence, the quieting of the habitual mental noise, so that consciousness can function as a precise instrument. Imagine a spotlight in a dark theater. The stage is vast, full of infinite scenes, characters, and possibilities. Wherever you point the spotlight, that scene becomes vivid, tangible, alive. But unlike a traditional spotlight, your inner awareness doesn't just illuminate. It organizes, it arranges, it aligns potential into reality. The simple act of focusing attention is already an act of creation. And here is the beautiful part. You don't need to strain, push, or force the spotlight. You only need to learn how to let it land where it matters, to observe without anxiety, to watch without attachment. This is what I call the silent observer. The silent observer is not a technique you do. It is a state you become. It is the part of you that can step back from the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions and simply notice. Ah, here is tension. Here is desire. Here is expectation. From this vantage point, you realize that nothing outside you has to change. The field shifts when you shift. This is why meditation, contemplative practices, and mindfulness have been revered across cultures for millennia. Not because they change the world directly, but because they teach the mind to watch without clinging, to collapse potential into presence effortlessly. From Vedantic sages to Taoist masters, the consistent teaching has been, reality is not something you chase. It is something you align with by observing into existence. And modern science is quietly catching up. Neurophysiologists and consciousness researchers, from Joe Dispenza to Amit Goswami, have documented how the brain and heart operate as tuning devices, resonating with specific frequencies that literally influence the environment around us. Studies from HeartMath, for example, show that coherent heart-brain states create measurable changes in electromagnetic fields extending beyond the body. In other words, your inner state is not confined to your skin. It interacts with the world. When your consciousness is fragmented, so is your reality. When your consciousness is coherent, so too is your environment. But the story doesn't end there. The deeper question becomes, why doesn't everyone know this? Why isn't this taught in schools alongside mathematics and history? The answer lies in the subtle suppression of knowledge that empowers rather than controls. Systems built on hierarchy, scarcity, and competition thrive when individuals believe the world is fixed, outside their control. Ancient wisdom was often cloaked in metaphor and ritual precisely because direct instruction about these truths could make the uninitiated dangerously free. Quantum consciousness, synchronicity, and the observer effect are not mere curiosities. They are blueprints for personal sovereignty, instructions for stepping into a role as conscious architect of your life. To bring this into daily life, the first step is noticing patterns without judgment. Consider the times when luck seems to follow you. Repeated numbers, encounters with exactly the right person, ideas appearing in sequence. Most people shrug and move on, attributing it to randomness. The silent observer, however, keeps a record, not to control, but to see the field of possibilities revealing itself. You can start by carrying a small journal, simply noting moments of meaningful coincidence, ideas that emerge without effort, and subtle nudges from intuition. Over time, a pattern emerges, and the illusion of randomness begins to dissolve. You realize that the universe is responding to a field of attention, not mere wishful thinking. Yet awareness alone is not enough. You must practice letting go of attachment to outcomes. Creation is not about pushing, forcing, or convincing reality to comply. It is about alignment. Consider the analogy of a radio tuner. If you squeeze the dial, shaking it aggressively, the signal is distorted, fuzzy, unclear. But when you relax your hand and turn slowly, delicately, the frequency emerges clearly, perfectly, without effort. Your inner state works the same way. Effort and control distort the signal. Presence and observant neutrality tune it. This is where the paradox of effortless creation becomes profound. Most people pursue goals as if they are external objects to be wrestled into existence. The silent observer, by contrast, cultivates a space of openness, watching the flow of potential, noticing where attention naturally wants to rest, and allowing reality to rearrange itself around that focused awareness. It's the difference between chasing a wave and becoming the surfer who moves in harmony with the ocean. And yet, for all the power of this approach, it requires patience, subtlety, and trust. The mind wants immediate results. The ego fears invisibility. That is precisely why learning to embody the silent observer is a radical act. As you begin to notice your attention, your thoughts, and your emotional reactions, you will uncover hidden currents in your life. Relationships that mirror unresolved fears, opportunities that appear as tests, coincidences that reveal unspoken desires. And here lies the empowerment. Once you see these currents, you can choose where to place your focus. You do not need to manipulate circumstances. You need only observe into existence. From this position, life starts to respond as if it were waiting for your acknowledgement, because at a quantum level, it is. Now take a moment to imagine yourself standing in a room with all the doors of possibility around you. You don't have to push any of them open yet. Simply notice them, step back, and observe the patterns forming between them. Some doors will appear solid, others will shimmer with light. The act of conscious observation alone begins to activate them. And this is why the silent observer is not just a tool, it is an identity. The moment you integrate this awareness, you begin to shift from being a participant in life to being a conscious co-creator of it. And if you're watching this, I want you to pause for a second and subscribe to this journey. Not because you need permission, but because every mind that tunes into this frequency amplifies it. For you, for me, for the collective. Just as quantum particles respond to observation, ideas respond to shared attention. By joining this channel, you are reinforcing your commitment to observing into existence, collapsing possibility into presence every single day. But the real work begins when you move from noticing to integrating. Observing is a state, not an action. You don't try to manipulate reality. You become the observer who can sense alignment, who can feel coherence in thought, heart, and environment. And that is what makes creation effortless. Once you step fully into this awareness, you will start seeing patterns in life that others miss. You'll notice opportunities arising from thin air, relationships deepening without struggle, insights arriving fully formed, as if whispered from some higher intelligence. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until it's no longer a technique, it is simply who you are. Yet here's the most astonishing secret. The universe doesn't resist when you are fully present. Resistance exists only in minds that are pushing, clinging, or striving. When you release the need to control, reality itself seems to bend toward your attention, delivering precisely what is in resonance with your silent observation. And here's a small experiment you can do starting today. Notice 3 coincidences that occur in your life without your intervention. Journal them. Reflect on them. Each one is a small demonstration of the quantum field responding to a consciousness that has learned to watch without grasping. And that, in essence, is the doorway into the silent observer technique. Not a method to perform, but a presence to embody. Not a strategy to control outcomes, but a practice to align with the underlying intelligence that already organizes reality. And once you glimpse even the faintest shimmer of this possibility, you realize that all your struggles to make things happen were simply misdirected effort. The universe is not waiting for you to hustle. It is waiting for you to arrive in awareness. But the story doesn't end there. And so we arrive at a deeper question. If reality responds to observation, why does it so often feel unpredictable, chaotic, or even hostile? Why do our intentions seem to fizzle, our plans collapse, and our desires remain just out of reach? The answer is both simple and profound. Most of us are observing, but not with clarity. We are scanning the world through filters shaped by fear, doubt, and unexamined patterns. We react to the noise of the external world instead of tuning into the subtle field of possibilities that is always present. In quantum physics, they call this decoherence, the blurring that happens when potential collapses under conflicting influences. In consciousness, it manifests as struggle, misalignment, and frustration. To understand how to become a true observer, let us return to the stage metaphor. Imagine standing in a grand theater of infinite stages. Each stage represents a potential reality, a combination of circumstances, opportunities, and relationships waiting to be illuminated. Most people rush onto the stage they think is theirs, acting out roles imposed by social expectation, habit, or fear. But the silent observer steps back, watching all stages simultaneously. The paradox here is dazzling. The more detached the observer, the more powerfully they influence the unfolding of each scene. This is not magic. It is quantum mechanics in action, mirrored in the consciousness of the human mind. Consider the famous double-slit experiment. Electrons fired at a barrier with 2 slits create an interference pattern, like waves, when unobserved. Yet the moment an observer measures which slit the electron passes through, the pattern collapses into particles behaving as though they had chosen a definitive path. The very act of observation transforms the nature of reality. Carl Jung called the human mind a mirror of the cosmos, capable of reflecting hidden archetypes into the manifest world. Michael Talbot, in The Holographic Universe, suggested that reality itself behaves like a hologram, where each part contains the whole. The implication is clear. Consciousness is not a passive receiver of experience. It is the architect of what appears, a lens through which infinite potential collapses into a tangible, lived world. And yet, awareness alone is not enough. Without refinement, our observation can reinforce old patterns rather than create new possibilities. Imagine focusing a flashlight in a foggy room. The beam illuminates, but also highlights every obstruction, every shadow. Fear, doubt, and unresolved emotion act like fog, scattering the light and weakening the signal. This is where practices of coherence, heart-brain alignment, breath work, and mindful presence become transformative. Researchers at HeartMath and studies on cardiac coherence show that when your heart and brain resonate in synchrony, the electromagnetic field you emit becomes more organized and precise, literally interacting with your environment in subtle but measurable ways. You are no longer a scattered observer. You become a field navigator, capable of sensing potential before it manifests. But let us also explore the ancient teachings that anticipated these discoveries. In Vedanta, the world is called Maya, the illusion created by attention and perception. The I Ching, thousands of years ago, described the unfolding of events as patterns influenced by timing, intention, and alignment with the Tao. Egyptian mystery schools spoke of initiation as the awakening of the inner eye, the ability to perceive the invisible forces shaping destiny. All of these traditions converge on one idea. Creation is less about doing and more about being aware of the field, of sensing the unseen currents that guide manifestation. And here is where the silent observer practice moves from theory to action. Begin by cultivating the capacity to notice without attachment. Observe your thoughts as if they belong to someone else. Watch emotions rise and fall without judgment. Pay attention to patterns in your life that recur with eerie precision. Numbers, people, conversations, coincidences. These are signposts from the quantum field, guiding you toward alignment. This is not superstition. It is evidence of the universe responding to a consciousness trained to notice. The practical translation is subtle but radical. Imagine approaching your life as a series of experiments rather than obligations. You don't chase, force, or manipulate outcomes. Instead, you cultivate presence, you refine attention, and you allow reality to deliver what resonates with the coherence you generate. Relationships respond. Opportunities arise. Ideas crystallize effortlessly. The observer doesn't demand, they notice, and the field responds. Yet society teaches the opposite. From early education to corporate culture, we are conditioned to measure results by struggle, effort, and visible productivity. Striving becomes equated with value. But the most profound creators, whether scientists, mystics, or artists, understand that true influence comes from alignment, not brute force. Nikola Tesla, whose work danced on the boundary between physics and intuition, described inventions coming to him fully formed in visions, moments when conscious effort dissolved and observation merged with inspiration. This is the same principle you can apply in everyday life. When you embody the observer, you allow solutions, opportunities, and synchronicities to emerge naturally. One of the most powerful tools is a reality journal. Begin by noting moments where outcomes seem to appear without effort. Track repeating signs, intuitive hits, or coincidences that defy explanation. Reflect on your inner state during these moments. Were you relaxed, open, coherent, or tense, anxious, and grasping? Over time, patterns emerge. You begin to see a direct correlation between the quality of your awareness and the quality of experiences manifesting. This is how unconscious creation becomes conscious creation, how random luck transforms into deliberate manifestation. But observation alone is not passive. It is radically responsible. The silent observer doesn't blame circumstances, nor do they wait for external conditions to be perfect. Instead, they cultivate the internal conditions, clarity, coherence, and presence that allow the external to reflect alignment. Think of it like tuning an instrument. You cannot control the symphony of the universe, but you can ensure that your instrument is perfectly tuned so that it resonates harmoniously with the music around you. And this is where identity shifts. The moment you embody this state, you are no longer the reactive participant in life. You become the conscious architect, the quiet center around which possibilities crystallize. Relationships transform as mirrors of alignment rather than battlegrounds of desire. Career opportunities unfold as a series of synchronicities rather than hard-fought battles. Even health and creativity respond, because the body-mind system operates optimally when coherence is present. Stress diminishes, intuition sharpens, and flow becomes the default. Yet, integrating this into daily life requires practice. Begin small. Observe your morning without judgment. Notice interactions without expectation. Track subtle coincidences without labeling them as luck or chance. Breathe into the quiet spaces between thought, and feel how even a few minutes of silent observation shifts your energy. Each observation is a seed planted in the quantum field, a ripple that will expand in ways your mind cannot yet calculate. Here is a subtle, powerful experiment. Notice 3 things today that you would normally overlook. Perhaps a pattern in someone's behavior, a number repeating in your environment, or a fleeting intuitive insight. Acknowledge them without forcing meaning. Simply observe. Tomorrow, notice 3 more. As these observations accumulate, you begin to feel the universe responding, not as a task, but as a living conversation. And in these moments, you understand that creation without effort is not passive. It is the effortless alignment of consciousness with the field of infinite potential. And if this resonates with you, consider subscribing now. Not just to watch, but to anchor yourself in a frequency that supports deep observation, subtle transformation, and conscious creation. Each video you engage with reinforces the habit of tuning attention with clarity, reminding you that reality is not outside, it is within. But there's another layer that transforms observation into power, emotional resonance. Observing the world without attachment is one thing. Observing it with love, curiosity, and awe is another. The field responds most strongly not to neutral observation, but to coherent, high-frequency emotion aligned with clarity of intent. This is why gratitude, joy, and wonder are not just feel-good exercises. They are measurable forces that collapse possibility into presence more efficiently than force, control, or striving ever could. As this awareness deepens, your life begins to rearrange itself. You notice relationships improving, ideas flowing effortlessly, opportunities appearing in ways that previously seemed impossible. The silent observer does not need to chase, because the field is now moving with them rather than against them. It is like a river that stops resisting and instead carries you toward your destination with effortless momentum. Yet, even here, the journey is infinite. Observation is not mastery, it is alignment. And alignment is not static, it is a continuous dance with the field, an ongoing practice of noticing, releasing, and resonating. The more you embrace this flow, the more you embody the identity of the field navigator, the conscious architect, the silent observer whose mere presence shapes reality. And just when you think you've grasped it, you notice something remarkable. The world doesn't just respond, it conspires. Opportunities arrive in synchrony with your inner clarity, insights come fully formed, and even challenges appear as invitations for deeper alignment. This is the quantum paradox of effortless creation. You do nothing, and yet everything shifts. You become the still point around which life arranges itself. But the story isn't finished. The ultimate shift happens when observation merges with intentional action, when presence meets discernment, and when your internal coherence guides external choices. And now, we arrive at the moment where understanding transforms into mastery. The silent observer is no longer just a concept. It is an identity, a living way of being that reshapes every corner of life. But here is the crucial distinction. Becoming a silent observer does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging from a place of clarity, coherence, and alignment, where every action is informed by presence rather than reaction. You are no longer tossed by circumstance. You are the center of the unfolding storm, the calm that directs the flow without force. To embody this fully, begin noticing the subtle cues in your daily life. Watch interactions without immediately reacting. Observe the rise and fall of emotions without labeling them good or bad. Pay attention to opportunities and coincidences, and test how they feel in your body before you act. This is not passive waiting. It is radical attunement to the quantum field of possibilities. You are learning to sense the invisible currents that guide your life, to feel the resonance of alignment before anything manifests externally. Relationships, in particular, transform under this influence. People become mirrors of your inner coherence. Conflicts dissolve when observed without judgment. Love deepens when given space to breathe. The silent observer notices patterns and connections, recognizing which interactions are in resonance and which are reflective of old, unresolved habits. Over time, you develop what I like to call relational intuition, the ability to navigate interpersonal landscapes effortlessly, responding from alignment rather than impulse. This doesn't just make life easier, it rewires your social world to reflect the inner harmony you cultivate. And finances, too, are no longer a struggle. The abundance you seek is not outside you, it is a reflection of your frequency. When your consciousness is coherent, when your attention is focused without grasping, the field responds. Opportunities that previously seemed improbable begin to arrive naturally, in perfect timing. Luck becomes predictable, not through control, but through alignment. Every decision you make carries the subtle influence of your silent observation, drawing resources, ideas, and connections that support the life you desire. Health responds in the same way. Stress is a signal of misalignment, tension a reflection of incoherent observation. By practicing the state of the silent observer, breathing into coherence, noticing without clinging, observing the present moment fully, you reduce internal friction. Your body, mind, and energy systems enter harmony, and the subtle intelligence that orchestrates life has more space to operate. Energy flows, clarity emerges, and resilience strengthens. The silent observer is not just a mental practice. It is an embodied state that transforms every system in your life. Creativity, too, flourishes effortlessly. Ideas arrive fully formed, inspiration becomes reliable, and problem-solving occurs naturally. This is because the observer disengages from the struggle of trying and taps directly into the flow of potential. Michelangelo once described a similar state when he said the sculpture already exists in the stone. The artist's task is to remove what is not needed. The silent observer works in a comparable way, by stepping back, noticing the possibilities, and allowing the field to reveal what is already there. Your mind stops forcing outcomes and starts curating reality from a place of coherence. Yet, embodying this state requires a subtle shift in identity. You are no longer a passive participant, reacting to life's chaos. You are a field navigator, a conscious architect, a silent observer whose presence alone organizes potential. This is not a role you perform, it is the natural expression of aligned consciousness. Every moment becomes a practice of noticing, releasing, and allowing. The more you inhabit this identity, the more effortless creation becomes, until it is no longer a technique. It is your default way of being. Practical exercises consolidate this identity. Start each day with a brief session of observing without judgment. Notice thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Track coincidences, insights, and intuitive nudges. Practice coherence techniques, deep, rhythmic breathing, heart-focused attention, and mindful presence. And crucially, release attachment to outcomes. Observe into existence, but do not grasp. Let the field respond without interference. Over weeks and months, these small daily practices accumulate, rewiring both perception and reality. You become a magnet for opportunities that previously seemed impossible. There is a profound spiritual dimension to this, too. Observing reality without grasping fosters a sense of unity. You begin to see the interconnectedness of all things, the way your attention ripples outward, influencing life in ways both subtle and profound. You realize that your higher self, your future self, and the unseen currents of possibility are all allies, guiding your observation toward alignment. The ego relaxes, attachment dissolves, and you operate from a place of clarity, power, and grace. This is the essence of conscious creation, not forcing life to comply, but becoming the observer who orchestrates it effortlessly. And here's where transformation becomes tangible. Relationships mirror your coherence, abundance flows naturally, health stabilizes, creativity expands. Even challenges become opportunities for observation and refinement. Life ceases to feel like a struggle and begins to feel like a dance, each step guided by intuition, resonance, and aligned attention. You are no longer chasing outcomes, outcomes are chasing alignment. And once this becomes habitual, it is astonishing how effortless life can feel. But the journey doesn't end here. The silent observer invites you to a deeper adventure, conscious participation in co-creation. Observation alone is powerful, but when paired with deliberate, aligned action, it transforms everything. You start noticing where your energy wants to go, where your intention resonates, and where your presence organizes the field. Action becomes effortless, inspired, and precise, because it is informed by a deep attunement to reality's subtle currents. As this identity solidifies, you will notice an extraordinary phenomenon. The world itself begins to conspire with you. Doors appear before you knock. Ideas arrive before problems manifest. Opportunities align as if guided by an unseen intelligence. This is the natural consequence of coherent observation. The universe responds not to force, but to presence. And the more consistently you practice, the more reliable these patterns become. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You are the observer whose quiet awareness orchestrates outcomes. And so the final step is integration. This means bringing the observer into every moment, not just meditation or reflection. During work, relationships, travel, and leisure, maintain awareness. Notice reactions without attachment, identify alignment, and allow the field to respond. Life itself becomes a mirror of your inner coherence. And when challenges arise, you meet them not with struggle, but with curiosity, clarity, and calm. This is the ultimate power of the silent observer: to create without trying, to manifest without pushing, to live as the architect of your own reality. And if you've followed this journey, here's a gentle invitation. Subscribe, not merely to watch more, but to anchor this frequency in your life. Let it remind you daily that you are not a passenger. You are a conscious creator. Each video, each insight, reinforces the practice of observing into existence, of collapsing possibility into presence. This is not theory. It is living reality waiting for you to step fully into it. And now, imagine the life you desire. Picture relationships that thrive effortlessly, ideas that arrive fully formed, opportunities that flow in perfect timing, and a body-mind system vibrating with clarity and coherence. All of this is accessible because you have learned the quiet, radical act of observing without attachment, of noticing without grasping, of allowing the field to respond. You are no longer striving. You are simply present, aligned, and powerful. The adventure continues beyond this moment. Every breath, every thought, every fleeting attention is an opportunity to refine your observation, to strengthen coherence, and to collapse potential into reality. Life becomes a dance, effortless yet precise, mysterious yet intimately responsive. And the most profound truth remains: the universe is not separate from you. It is responding to the consciousness you embody. So take this awareness into the world. Observe fully, release attachment, and allow life to flow around your presence. Step into the role of the silent observer, the conscious architect, the field navigator. Watch, notice, feel, and allow. And remember, this is not a one-time revelation. It is a lifelong practice, a living journey of alignment, coherence, and effortless creation. And finally, if the insights here have shifted your perspective even slightly, take a moment now. Write an intention, speak it aloud, share it in the comments, affirm it. Something as simple as, "I choose what to observe today," becomes a seed planted in the quantum field, a subtle act of creation that signals the universe to respond. And for those who are ready, the next step on this journey is to let go of the old patterns, to dissolve resistance, and to deepen the practice of observing into existence fully. And as you do, remember this final truth: creation is not in the doing. Creation is in the being. In the quiet space between thought and observation, in the stillness where presence meets possibility, you become the architect of everything you experience. You do not try. You do not force. You simply observe, and the world unfolds around you in perfect, effortless resonance.